Good morning. Vessels of Life-Saving Welcome by Michael J. Tino. The flaming chalice was first used by the Unitarian Service Committee as a symbol of life-saving refuge for people fleeing persecution in Europe. As we light this chalice, we invoke the love that called people to put their lives at risk to save others. May we be vessels of life-saving welcome. Please join me in our chalice lighting words. May this flame be our light of friendship and love. Good morning, second time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. We welcome you here in the sanctuary and those who have opted to join us on YouTube. The online folks are muted, and I would ask the people here to do the same. Please ensure that your devices are turned off. My name is Marianne Terpstra. My pronouns are she, her, and I am this morning's service leader, if you haven't guessed that already. I want to thank today's service team, which includes Reverend Jamie Boyce, music ministers Beverly Horton, Rachel Derry, and our ensemble. Story for All Ages will be done by religious educator Tim Versteeg. And our tech team includes John Elliott, Josh McIntyre, Marianne Forbes, and Chase Tapley. Our ushers today are Agnes Cunningham and Peter Morgan. And worship associates are Anne Craig Hoath and Sue Johnston. So, we are not the first people on this land, nor will we be the last. We acknowledge our connection to the web of all existence, honoring the past and preparing for the future. The stewardship of the original people who lived here preserve this place for our generation now. We seek to be respectful stewards of this place for those who will follow. Whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever you are on your journey of faith or search for meaning, today you are one of us and you are welcome in this house of worship. Our mission is to nurture one another, serve the community, and inspire action that heals the world.
Good morning, beloveds. It is good to be with you today again. Look, the sun is shining just for us. My name is Reverend Jamie Boyce. My pronouns are she, her, and I have the great privilege of serving this congregation as its interim minister. Welcome to all those gathered here today, those gathering with us in our digital ministry for this day of reflection, this time for us to reflect deeply on questions of ultimate concern, to notice the challenge of history, and to huddle around the warmth and love of beloved community as we dwell in the presence of mystery. May this time together open our hearts and invite us into the possibilities of a future made better by our commitments and care. I invite you to turn to your neighbor and greet them warmly with the words, "I am glad you are here." And if you're joining us online, I invite you to welcome each other in the chat. I love seeing all this happiness and joy. Indeed, it is good to be together again. As we rise to sing our first hymn, Hush, I invite us to pause and pay homage to the roots of this song and the music of Black spirituals. Reverend Kimberly Debuse reminds us that it is a spiritual that calls forth the longing for freedom by enslaved Africans. And we might notice that in the version in our hymnal, it replaces references to Jesus with freedom and justice. Let us sing filled with reverence, love, and care our first hymn, Hush, which is, if you're using a teal hymnal, is number 1040. Are we singing we're going to do both.
We're going to do the UU version.
We are.
Yes.
Well, now we know. We learned.
Thank you for
Okay.
contextualizing that.
Hush, hushed, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like freedom. Somebody's calling my name. Oh, my Lord, what shall I do? Sounds like little justice, and somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice, somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice, somebody's calling my name. Oh, my Lord, what shall I do? Soon one morning, death come creeping in my room. Soon one morning, death come creeping in my room. Soon one morning, death come creeping in my room. Oh, my Lord, what shall I do? Oh, I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. Oh, my Lord, what shall I do?
Good morning. My name is Tim Versteeg, and it is my great pleasure to be the religious educator for the First Unitarian Church of Hamilton. My pronouns are he, him. Today we have a story of the great Canadian musician Oscar Peterson, and it's called Oscar Lives Next Door, and it's written by Bonnie Farmer and illustrated by Marie LaFrance. There we go. Daddy is a Pullman porter on the railway. He is dog-tired by the time he gets off the train at Windsor Station. It's good to be home, he says softly as he lays his head on his pillow. But he doesn't fall asleep because Oscar lives next door. Root-a-toot-toot goes Oscar's trumpet. Daddy sits up in bed. We're moving, he says. That Oscar roots and toots too much. Bing, bang, bop goes Oscar's piano. We're moving, says Daddy, pulling the pillows up over his ears. That Oscar bings, bangs, and bops too much. Oscar's brothers and sisters play musical instruments too. They jam day and night. Bing, bang, bop, bop, bang. Root-a-toot-toot-toot. We're moving, Daddy shouts. I can't stand this racket anymore. He shoves cotton in his ears, but nothing can drown out the music from next door. We never do move. I love listening to Oscar's lullaby long after the shuffling, scuffling noises of our neighborhood hush. One day, Oscar races me down Atwater Street, and we run past the dress shop with its doll ladies dressed in sparkling gowns. We sprint past the beauty parlor where hair sizzles between the hot comb's teeth. My legs are shorter and move faster than Oscar's long legs, but he takes bigger strides than I do. He reaches the corner before me. Let's pretend to be elephants, I say. We lumber down the street, swaying our arms from side to side and bellowing. A farmer's cart rolls by us on its way to the market. Nay, whinnies the horse pulling the cart. Nay, we answer back, bobbing our heads and lifting our feet high like horses. We giddy up back to the church where we play a trick on Reverend James. We bang on the church door and hide. Reverend James pokes his head out of a window. Oscar, Mildred, he calls. Come out from behind those bushes. My heart pounds in my chest. Oscar's eyes are as big as saucers. We dash away, squealing like piglets. We don't stop running till we're back home. Oscar is laughing so hard, he starts to cough. He has to bend over to catch his breath. Oscar's father calls and points to his watch. It's time for Oscar's music lesson. See you tomorrow, Oscar, I say. Oscar waves goodbye. On warm evenings, we sit on the back porch listening to neighborhood sounds. A train whistle wails in the distance. Daddy's train. That's A and F, Oscar says. I strain to listen, but only Oscar can hear every musical note of the howling choo-choos as Daddy's train leaves the station and clangs along the canal. The trumpet is Oscar's favorite instrument. There's a genie inside, says Oscar. Listen. He blows a few notes, and like magic, a turbaned genie curls out of the trumpet's mouth and floats above the telephone wires. Oscar is a magician. The following Saturday morning, I wait for Oscar to race me to the corner again, but he doesn't come. I knock on his door. Is Oscar home, I ask? Oscar's very sick, dear, replies Mrs. Peterson. He had to go to the hospital last night. Turns out that Oscar has a disease with a long name, tuberculosis. Thank goodness there's a shorter way to say it, TB. Oscar has TB. The doctor says he'll get better, but it will take a long time. I hide in the hall closet. Millie, Mom calls me to supper. I squirm deeper into the closet. Mildred, what are you doing? We played a trick on Reverend James. Is that why Oscar's sick? Mom smiles and shakes her head. No, Millie, you catch TB from other people, not from making mischief. It's like a really, really bad cold. It hurts your chest and makes you cough a lot. Mama rings Mrs. Peterson's doorbell and invites her over for tea. How is Oscar? Mrs. Peterson stirs her tea for a moment, then blurts, he won't talk. We can't get a peep out of him. He refuses to talk. The nurses are beside themselves. His father thinks he needs a good spanking. What shall we do? I'm at the end of my rope. I can't visit him in the hospital, so I make Oscar a card. Dear Oscar, the trick we played on Reverend James did not make you sick. Get better and come home soon. Love, Millie. XOXOXOXOXOXOXO. I draw a picture on the envelope and seal it, and Mom and I trudge up the hill to the children's hospital and give it to the nurse at the front desk. He'll be thankful for the kind gesture from a friend, she says. I wait a long, lonesome time for Oscar to get better. One morning, Mom hands me a letter with musical notes doodled all over the envelope. Dear Millie, I got a tractor. It's red and silver and big as a house. The nurses gave it to me because I am so quiet. I like it here now. I was scared and lonely before. I wish you were here too. Oscar, XO. Not long afterwards, Mrs. Peterson tells Mom that Oscar's talking and laughing again. He's back to his old self, she said, and I'm glad. Spring breezes blow fat bellies into Mama's washing, and Oscar is still in the hospital. At nighttime, I toss and turn. Without Oscar's lullaby, I can't fall asleep. I tiptoe into the living room where Daddy listens to the radio, and I curl up on the carpet like a cat. Soft jazz plays through the radio's carved wooden panel. I believe Daddy misses Oscar too. When Daddy falls asleep, I wander out to the back porch. A light is on at Oscar's. I peek through the kitchen window and see him hunched over the piano. His fingers tickle the keys while the radio purrs smoky rhythms. Oscar is home. The next day, Oscar stands on the back porch holding his trumpet. He puts it to his mouth and gently presses the keys, but no sound comes out. Daddy and I watch as Oscar takes apart his horn, bit by bit, piece by piece. I want to see where the magic comes from, he says. He pokes a finger inside the brass tubes. He looks through one end like a ship's captain. Pretty soon the floor is cluttered with shiny tubes and valves that he can't put back together. Oscar looks like he might cry. Daddy tells me that Oscar's lungs are no longer strong enough to blow into a horn. Daddy tips his porter's cap and kisses me goodbye, and when I get back to Montreal, I want to see smiles on both of your faces. I sit beside Oscar on the porch. Warm rain pitter-patters on Oscar's scattered horn. I pick up one of the shiny tubes. Maybe there's a genie inside the piano, too, I say. We stand on chairs, open the top of the piano, and gaze inside. Rows of little wooden hammers wearing felt hats run from one side of the piano to the other. Bands of wires stand at attention in front of the hammers. We take turns playing a key and watching a little hammer strike the wire. Oscar sits at the piano. His fingers pause over the keys for a moment before playing. When they finally touch the keyboard, it sounds like rolling thunder. Yeah. His father hires a piano teacher, and Oscar practices. We don't have much time to play anymore, but we still like to sit on the back porch. Tonight, Mama has a treat for Oscar and me, but it's not ready yet. We watch the sun set while jazz music bubbles up from a dance club. I'm going to be an explorer, says Oscar. I'm going to be a ballerina, I say. We daydream while Mama's cornbread cools on the windowsill. And that's the end of our story today. So, Lila's going to grab our children's chalice, and if folks want to meet Kelly Wolf at the back, who's our volunteer today, and we will head out back to the children's program.
That was a good story. Good history. I invite us into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer. With Valentine's Day just on our horizon, and as we embrace the call of our faith in centering love among us and our bodies as vehicles for this love, I offer this poem this morning from the author Enfleshed. Love cannot be bought or sold. It does not make a profit. Love does not hide from truth. Love dives deep. Love takes on flesh. Love is queer. Love is platonic. Love is erotic. Love is asexual. Love confronts evil. Love delights in pleasure. Love touches and weeps and flirts and feeds and creates. Love is risky. Love challenges systemic evil in all ways, in all forms. Love is simple, but not easy. Love is collective. Love rises up. Love apologizes. Love believes. Love corrects. Love holds accountable. Love pays reparations. Love heals. Love tells its story. Love embraces everyone, every creature, every creation. It is known intimately. It holds us collectively. Love transcends every boundary that seeks to confine it. It will not tolerate violence in its name. It does no harm. It only sets free. invite us in a time of collective silence. It is our tradition to light candles of community. As you feel called, I invite you to come to the center of our sanctuary and light a candle as a symbol of your love, of any joy, any private sorrow you may be holding today, and allow this space to come alive with your presence. Now is the time in our service where we share the joys and sorrows of our community. If you have a joy or sorrow to share on a Sunday morning, you can email it to me at jamie@uuhamilton.ca, or you can stop by our Joys and Sorrows table in our sanctuary, which has a beautiful little red light perched on it, so you can't miss it. We only share joys and sorrows in our community from those who have given their consent for this news to be shared. And we appreciate this time each week as sacred and holy. We share more news about the celebration of life for Leslie Cordero. A party celebrating Leslie's full life will be held on February 19th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Cotton Factory, 270 Sherman Avenue North, where she spent much of her time, and it was her studio, and I imagine sacred and holy to her. We hope to see many of her friends and many of those among us there. Today we share news that Pat Weber has been having health issues with pain in her back. She's getting good health care and family are with her for support. She is improving but still has a long way to go. She is thinking of all of her church friends, but at this time, she asks that we not call her, as phone calls can be very tiring, and she is getting all the rest she possibly can. Pat, we hold you in our care, and we miss you too. I have a joy to share this morning from Joanne Tunnicliffe. Joanne shares that Alan and she are leaving to camp on the Virgin Islands for 2 weeks. Joanne will turn 76 years young while away, and they plan to return healthy and happy. Happy, happy birthday. Safe journeys. Have a wonderful time. Celebrate big. Celebrate with magnificence. Birthdays are special. We know there are sorrows too tender yet to share among us today and in our wider community. We hold those together in beloved community. We know that there are joys among us too, just getting ready to break forth. We celebrate those joys among us this morning.
A reading. This Essential Work of Justice and Liberation for All by Rosemary Bray McNatt. The Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt became president of Starr King School for the Ministry in Berkeley, California on July 1st, 2014. For 13 years, she was senior minister of the Fourth Universalist Society in the city of New York, a 175-year-old Unitarian Universalist congregation on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, she is a graduate of Yale University and Drew Theological Seminary. And this is her reading. By no means are we, Unitarian Universalists, perfect. We often fail as much as we succeed. How well we know. Yet even when, quote, we have broken our vows 1,000 times, unquote, we return to this essential work of justice and liberation for all. We do the work best when we remember what church is and what it is not. Church is not a place to hide. It is not the place to get away from the world. It is not a place where we get to pretend that our lives, but the lives we live in our particular situations are not terribly complex, often confusing, and sometimes depressing. Church is a place where we stand with one another. Look the world in the eye, attempt to see clearly, and gather strength to face what we see with courage, and yes, with joy. And this reading is from Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt's essay called Our Faith. Our offering is a reminder of the spirit of generosity that is at the heart of our religious community. When we share our financial resources, we ensure the continued existence of our church. We will now receive our offering while we listen to our music ministers. Hooray for Rachel. Your gifts in support of our ministries to one another and to the community are appreciated. Thank you.
I echo that. Rachel, it's good to have you back. Welcome back again, week 2. Whew. You have a way of playing the piano. Just a way. Yeah. My talk this morning is inspired by the book, The 1619 Project. It is part confession, reflection, and call to action as we individually and collectively thicken and deepen our 8th principle practice and welcome the work of transformation. As you know, last year, this congregation voted overwhelmingly to affirm our 8th principle, to affirm that we, the member congregations of the Canadian Unitarian Council, covenant to affirm and promote individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and systemic barriers to full inclusion in ourselves and our institutions. In the last year, we have begun to bring greater intention, direction, and action to be accountable to this covenant. And as we emerge from the pandemic years and begin to shape and reshape our community from the inside, this covenant and affirmation is the most important work we are doing among us. And I notice the energy, enthusiasm, and willingness to learn, grow, and take action in our community here at First Hamilton and in our wider world. It is here, alive, pounding in our hearts, and I too feel the excitement of living in extraordinary times. Perhaps you've noticed the weave and weft of community shifting as we move towards new ways of doing and being together, of centering and privileging voices and experiences and wisdoms of those who have historically been marginalized in our communities. We are learning more about how we hold and respond to intersectionality among us, and how to notice and disrupt fields of power as they shape and replicate harm and cultures of white supremacy and colonialism in our midst. It is in this spirit that I, a cisgendered working-class white woman, arrive this morning, holding observations, questions, and dreams for our future faith. In the summer of 2019, I was living in New Jersey, and it was my Sunday habit to come home from a long day at church and spend the afternoon drinking coffee and reading through the Sunday New York Times. I loved this ritual, the way I would drift into a nap after a few hours of reading in spite of the countless cups of coffee coursing through me. I still found a place for a nap. On a hot Sunday in August, I opened the New York Times Magazine and began a journey with history, began my own reckoning with what I didn't know. What I skimmed by was allowed myself to slip through my hands, even as I held the privilege of an education as a white woman in the United States. The publication of the 1619 Project in August of 2019 marked 400 years since the arrival of enslaved Africans to the English colony of Virginia. It is, as the title invokes, a book about a new origin story. And it tracks through history, literature, art, music, public culture, and lived experience the legacy of the arrival of enslaved people to the American colonies, and the legacy, violent and foundational to the building of an empire by the horrific forced migration of people from Africa. It began a revolution of conversation, education, and truth-telling that continues to demand an ongoing reckoning of the present with the past. To name the ways in which the economy, ecology, and institution of slavery shaped systemic oppression, violence, and the reproduction of white supremacy in the United States and beyond. Nicole Hannah-Jones, the creator of the 1619 Project, writes in the preface to the book, "What would it mean to reframe our understanding of U.S. history by considering 1619 as our country's origin point? The birth of our defining contradictions, the seed of so much of what has made us unique. How might that reframing change how we understand the unique problems of the nation today? Its stark economic inequality, its violence, its world-leading incarceration rates, its shocking segregation, its political divisions, its stingy social net. How might it help us understand the country's best qualities, developed over a centuries-long struggle for freedom, equality, and pluralism, a struggle whose DNA could also be traced to 1619. How would looking at contemporary American life through this lens help us better appreciate the contributions of Black Americans? Origin stories organize our lives. They provide scaffolding for self and collective understanding. They shape institutions and direct power and agency. And this origin story powerfully undermines and corrects the American narrative that trots out the Mayflower and the majesty of the white founding fathers innocently setting up shop in Massachusetts in 1620. It is important to maintain a good archaeology of the past, to revisit and notice elisions and omissions, to notice whose power is privileged and centers in the stories we tell about ourselves. My encounter with the 1619 Project taught me about what I had missed out on, what I failed to pursue on my own and take responsibility for, the things my whiteness and my privilege hid in plain view from me. And I have a recent experience of this that I want to share with you this morning. Bear with me. On Martin Luther King Day, just a few weeks ago, I quoted from a talk that Dr. King gave to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in 1957 upon his return from Ghana. The title of this sermon is Birth of a New Nation, and it revisits the colonial history of Africa and the Gold Coast, as he is preparing to celebrate the liberation movement of Ghana and the birth of a new nation. I shared with you from this text the imagination of Dr. King for a global freedom movement, one that explicitly connected alliances, allegiances, and solidarities between American and African contexts. What struck me, literally in my gut, as I reread Dr. King's sermon after many years, I had read it many, many times before in the past, that as he's telling the story of colonialism to his congregation in 1957, he tells his congregation this: you remember it started in America in 1916. This is my confession. It wasn't until this recent rereading that this line struck me, made me pause, inviting me to dwell in the invocation of history that I was previously carelessly unable to notice. I'm ashamed to say that before my learning journey with the 1619 Project, I missed that line. It slid right by me, and I went straight for Dr. King's critique of power, and I never noticed that I was living a whitewashed history that could not and did not see that date as important, even as I read it 100 times before. Since January, I've been more open to my personal learning journey, more open to pausing and asking critical questions about what I'm reading, listening to, watching, enjoying, and trying hard to take responsibility for my bias that allows important, significant things to slip by, and to be graciously accountable when I'm alerted to a miss. I bet you're wondering what this means for us, a Unitarian Universalist community in Hamilton, Ontario. Well, makes me wonder about the hidden history and grand narratives that shape our personal and collective work as we seek to be truth tellers and agents of transformation in the world. I wonder what history gets passed over in dangerous and harmful ways. How are romanticized narratives that situate Canada as the end of the Underground Railroad, the Promised Land, the Holy Land, on the other side of captivity and wilderness, detrimental to our commitments to live the promise of our faith? Indeed, if we aren't telling the truth, we are not being authentic in our covenant. We know the colonial project landed on these shores too. We know that borders and boundaries are fluid and porous and that history is layered and complex. So what is getting missed when we fail to remember the past? How can we have integrity about our commitment to love and liberation that is at the heart of our faith? In delving into this exploration and this question, which today remains unfinished, this is a work in progress, I stumbled across the 2017 United Nations Human Rights Report. It was a mission to Canada to explore the state of affairs. And it writes, slavery existed in Canada from the 16th century until its abolition in 1834. After slavery was abolished, African Canadians still had to contend with de facto segregation in housing, schooling, and employment, and exclusion from public spaces such as theaters and restaurants. And I would add to this list healthcare inequality that is not explicitly named in the report, but which was and remains a chronic disparity throughout Canadian history. In 2018, the CBC did a series on the erasure of the history of slavery in Canada and named it a national crisis of denial, and noticed the dependence on false narratives that ultimately erases Blackness from the history of Canada. And the result of that is a legacy of anti-Blackness that pervades Canadian culture while being concealed by a history that denies systemic racism rooted in practices and histories of slavery. Largely, it gets attributed as a problem to the south of us. And this, to me, seems to replicate the ways in which northern U.S. states locates slavery as a problem of the southern states, thus shielding themselves behind a false narrative and avoiding responsibility. We defer it over there. We know that slavery existed in Canada and the French and British territories for 200 years. When I've asked about this casually, because I'm genuinely interested, I get met with a bit of side eye and a long pause. Perhaps this is an uncomfortable conversation to have with an American, or perhaps the silence is intended to silence. I don't know. Such an exploration and honesty might also lead us to better understand how this history of, or how the history of our congregation was shaped, and consider the context of our origin story here. There are good questions to ask and hold, even if there aren't clear answers. For example, our congregational historian, Bill Johnston, notes that all of the founding members appear to be white and were of the middle and skilled working class. Bill writes further, socioeconomic status helps shape how we see the world. H. Richard Niebuhr has suggested that there is a congenial fit between attitudes typical of upwardly mobile middle-class people and a theology like that of Unitarians, with its focus on individual character and conscience, on human ability to draw nearer to God by our own efforts, and on personal responsibility and a priesthood of all believers. The downside can be a sense that success is evidence of a virtue, that sin or failure are also the fault of the individual, which would undermine a commitment to social justice. Attitudes based on our socioeconomic status affect not just the particular religions we are drawn to, but also, over time, modify the religion itself. We are shaped by our histories. We are shaped by the nuance that we live inside on a national level and on the very local ways we inhabit history. We might reflect on these intersections of identity and consider how they have shaped our community and consider where we are going. I'll add to this story that when I reached out to Bill to let him know that I would be referencing his work today, he corrected me, saying that this is our history and that the Congregational Archive team was led by Mary Elizabeth Fulton, Linda Layden, and the late Lynn Ablard. They did tremendous work to organize it, and Bruce McPherson helped them arrange it and store it in the public library. Bill further shares, I did do a lot of additional work on researching our locations. This is another important reminder to spend time discovering the context in which historical record is produced. A fitting encounter to talk about history more broadly and our own wrestling with history in particular. It is rarely one person. I hope this conversation this morning is received today in the spirit of opening greater honesty and authenticity as we move into deeper work together. It feels essential that we are able to ask hard questions, that we challenge what we think we know, and that we grow our capacity to notice how privilege and social locations shape what we notice and how we respond. Spirit of life and love. As we sit with history and the call of our faith to tell the truth and take responsibility for the legacy of the histories we live through us and among us, be with us this morning. Hold us in your care. If you would like to learn more, to join us in this covenantal work, I have a call to action for you. On March 3rd and 4th, we are hosting a workshop on building a culture of inclusion with Dr. Paula Cole-Jones, author of The Eighth Principle and leader in the Article 2 revisions. Beverly Horton has arranged for us to spend a substantial amount of time learning with Dr. Paula Cole-Jones and deepening our practice. A link will be dropped into the chat online that will take you to the registration, or there's a small table outside with a beautiful little plant. You can sign up there, leave your name and email, and we will get you signed up as soon as possible. take a breath. Let's take a breath. One more. Spirit of life and love, dwell among us. We're going to sing. We have a song. Which number?
10:15.
10:15 in the Teal hymnal. And Marianne will be our hymn singer. Go, beloveds, into a future full of possibilities to learn, grow, and love more voraciously. May the communities you dwell in and among be changed by your passion for justice. May it be so, and blessed be.
So the postlude is More Waters Rising. And I've done this to you once before where I've tried to teach you a song by rote. This one's even more complicated than last one. So do as best you can. I'm going to ask that you try at least for the first two verses. And then the last two, things switch up a little bit. So I'll take the lead on that one. So we'll do one line at a time, then we'll put two lines together, then we'll do two more lines, we'll put those together, and then we'll give you the first verse. Okay. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. Good. Next one. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Let's put those first two together. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Beautiful. So this is the third line. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. Fourth line. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. The last part. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Let's try the whole verse together. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Second verse. There are more fires burning, and it follows the same pattern. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to me. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. I'll take the last on my. I will wade through the fire, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. I will wade through the water, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will walk through the fire, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fire, this I know. I will walk through the fire when it finds a way to me. I will walk through the fire, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fire, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Well done.
Thank you, Beverly. Lovely. We have a few announcements. The Climate Action Team invites you to a special presentation in person or via live stream on February 15 at 7 p.m. by Dr. Tony Rockingham. Learn what we can do to make a difference. And join the transition team for a conversation that will celebrate the history of the congregation by sharing our stories and memories. Sign up for one session to share your wisdom stories with the Interim Ministry Transition Team. Please consult the weekly all-church email for dates and to register. The Climate Action Team has purchased for the library multiple copies of two excellent books by renowned Canadian climate scientists, Catherine Hayhoe's Saving Us and Mark Jacquard's A Citizen's Guide to Climate Success. Several copies of both titles are available for sign-out this morning, and see Angela Morgan after the service in the foyer. The music team invites you to explore the mystical and healing dimensions of sound in a workshop presented by Michael Moon, not DJ. This in-person workshop will be offered in 2 sessions on Saturday, February 25th. Space is limited, so register early by contacting Beverly Horton and Joanne Deere. Please include, quote, sound bath, unquote, in your email subject line. More information can be found on the church website and in the weekly all-church email. For more information about these events and to register, please see our website and your weekly all-church email. Now I'm going to extinguish the chalice, and I think we have a goodbye song. Do we not have a goodbye song? Not today? Oh, okay.